alternatively, Alex, he may be reacting to an Earth change event because if you watch the newspapers prior, that there is so much strange stuff that is coupled with. We can kind of go through the checklist. There's a group called ELFRAD, which is the extremely low frequency radio monitoring group. They start picking up what are called howlers at extremely low frequencies down, below 20 kilohertz. Wow. And I don't know if you've really ever gotten into that, but it's pretty interesting. Piezo, depending on which part of the country you're from, piezoelectric crystals are what are commonly used, or were commonly used, to keep transmitters on frequency because they would oscillate at one frequency and one frequency only. And what happens, according to the adherents of ELFRAD theory, or extremely low frequency radio theory, is that when you get these big chunks of the Earth's crust moving around, that twists the crystal. And when you twist a crystal, it generates electricity. In fact, there were piezoelectric microphones, the so-called crystal microphones, that were very popular in the 1950s, 1960s, before the high-quality condenser microphone technology was pioneered. So it's a possibility that your dog may not have even seen a rattlesnake. He may be reacting to some of the other things that accompany pre-earthquake conditions, just as a possibility. So while you should check them out for bites and stuff, it may be something else going on.
Sure, it's possible, except that there is a rattlesnake out here, and and he was looking and acting real funny where I last saw the rattlesnake. So you don't have a lost dog. You got a dog that probably got a jump at his nose or a scratch or something. Could be, yeah.
Yeah. Do you see any swelling or anything like that?
No, I haven't, because he's sitting in the truck now, or was, and then we'll see what happens. I'll check him. That's all right.
Yeah. Well, gotta take care of your animals because they take care of us.
They sure do.
Yep.
George, tell everybody, because this is the work that Cliff does is some of the most mind-boggling things that I've ever seen. I'll tell you why. Number one, everybody or most people today have computers, and then we know what computers can do. But Cliff has come up with a program where, indeed, and you can explain how he gets his information. I mean, because it's a phenomenal thing as far as I'm concerned, that he is able to not only tap into, I guess, websites that people have and see the trend of what people are saying and the words that they use and ideas that they put forth, and from that his computer program comes up with basically prognostications of what's going to happen. And he has been so accurate, and I'll go back to September 11th when we had that episode. Cliff, in his WebBot runs, came up with a warning that the United States was going to be hit by 2 planes at the World Trade Center on such and such a date. Is that right?
Well, it wasn't quite that accurate.
Okay.
What it actually said was the United States was going to go through a huge tipping point, and the tipping point had some geographical clouds, if you will, associated with it. One of those clouds was over the Philippines, which we later find out is an Al-Qaeda hangout. Another one of those clouds was over South America, and a third was over Las Vegas. And the reason that's so interesting to us is because that's exactly the moment in time, and we published this around July 2nd or so of 2001. That's about the time that the terrorists were actually in Las Vegas. Now, that's pretty freaky. Now, when we say a tipping point, there are lots of things that can qualify as a tipping point. But when you start talking about a whole society going through a change such that when you look at it in the rearview mirror of history, it almost looks like a right turn took place in September of 2001. I'm sorry. September 11th of 2001. And so when the model starts telling us that we've got tipping points coming up basically we start tipping at a conscious level publicly around the middle of June or so, and it just keeps getting worse for the rest of the year. That's kind of interesting to us.
When you say a tipping point, George, explain exactly what that means.
Yeah. Well, let me explain the processing for people who don't thoroughly understand it, although I've tried to write about it as best I can. Suppose that you could listen simultaneously to 30, 40, 50 million conversations on the Internet. And let's say that you were looking at the word box, and somehow or other, all of those conversations in aggregate stopped referring to box in a general sense, and started referring to box as collapse. And it didn't happen until a particular date. So in the software, which is quite complicated, we collect literally millions of half paragraphs and paragraphs of conversation, and then rip them apart for linguistic processing, and you basically find what are called attributes and aspects of particular words. So all of a sudden, box, which had not had anything particularly associated with it, suddenly develops a large number of conversations, start using phrases like collapse next to the word box. So in model space, when we get around to the processing, one of the things that begins to occur is we would start seeing in model space the equivalent of box collapses. So now we don't know what box at this point, but you start doing that for thousands and thousands of words, and all of a sudden you can come up with descriptors that generally seem to indicate the almost down at the archetype level how future events will be described. A perfect example. We hit the Northeast power outage in, I think it was August of 2003. And the descriptors for that came out of model space as near a break or sound of breaks. And there was another descriptor that said abandoned cities and flowing to the south and place of power and so forth. Well, they all in and of themselves, and we really thought, based on the description, that it was going to be an attack on a nuclear power plant on the coast of California. Yeah. Because that's what was in the news at the time, was threats of Al Qaeda attacking nuclear power plant. Right. But interestingly, all in retrospect, it was a nearly perfect fit, because what we saw actually occur was the sound of brakes is the sound of the braking over the falls. The looks like a city abandoned, or the abandoned city reference, is what the transformer switchyard looks like, because those transformers, many of them do look kind of like high-rise buildings, the old square ones. Right. And they have gravel between them, which looks like streets. And so, of course, you'd say it looks like an abandoned city, because we don't, because at an archetypical level, you don't have the kind of resolution that you'd get with a 6-megapixel camera. And it was a place of power, which certainly qualifies as the Niagara Power Generation Station, and flowing to the south is the direction. And then there was something else about smells in the area, which was really curious. And at the time of the outage, there were problems, and one of the sewer systems had to be dumped into the Niagara River downstream, and that was reported 2-3 hours, 4 hours after the event. Now that's a perfect case. I mean, that's textbook what the technology can do. and it's really interesting because we've had other people that have come along and have started to use the frame web bots, and they're calling their various project web bots. Well, we started off this project as kind of a nut job. Cliff freely admits to that, and one of his goals with the software initially was to pick the all-time high of Microsoft. And by the way, he got it right within 3 weeks. So when the model starts telling us things like short AIG, which it did when AIG was 74.
That's right,
when the model said, get the hell out of AIG, we published that, but saying, this is not financial advice. This is a couple of nut jobs in software. However, if you had followed that advice or had shorted AIG, let me pull it up here on my quote daily. If you had shorted, you'd see AIG has been as low here in the last 3 months. It's been almost down to 50 a couple of times. So that's like a 33% move in a stock. And that's worthwhile information. The new run, the 905 series, is just being compiled, and if you go to halffasthuman.com, you can subscribe to it. It's not free, but there are things in it. For example, and I put this on my website. In model space, there is a prediction that in mid-June, July kind of time frame, silver will start going up in price, and it's going to take off at like about think of it, Alex, as about a 30-degree angle on the chart.
Wow.
And then it's going to go vertical. Now, we don't know what the hell's going to cause that. We have no idea. And it could be that the reference to silver could be completely extraneous. I mean, it could be hi-ho silver, or it could be driven by some linguistic thing, but from how people relate to silver at an emotional level across the internet, it turns really, really positive by the 4th of July. And so what Elaine and I have been doing is, quietly buying up and shipping off to our very, very secure storage plan. We've been buying up 100-ounce bars of silver.
Wow.
It's things like that are actionable. Now we have the whole, not the whole, but a lot of the basic server costs are underwritten by an Asian investment group, which we warned about the derivatives meltdown 3 or 4 weeks before the real crunch here started recently, as a custom part of the 605 run, which was not shared entirely with the subscriber base because it was a proprietary special part of the run. And these guys are thrilled because it kept them from taking a substantial bath, because they unloaded derivatives positions before the recent problem cropped up. However, if you believe model space, and that's what's kind of interesting about this technology, we are far from the end of the problems of this latest derivatives flare-up.